If the play screen is the heart and soul of A Train Station, then the bet detail screen is the kind of scalpel that gives us the most edge possible. This is the thing that helps us cut into these markets and make plays that are profitable in the end. And there's so much going on here. It is something that I think is essential for anybody that is using A Train Station to really master. I mean, this is where you're going to spend much of your time. You'll review plays on the play screen, but here on this bet detail screen, this is where you're really going to understand all the ins and outs of it. And we're not even going to go into every single detail on this page, but we're going to cover the areas that you're going to need to look at and experiment with to understand how to use this page to the best of your ability. Now, the first thing is that we have game time. Always important to check that. This is always going to be normalized to whatever your current time is on your computer that you're using. One thing to note, you'll have the game information here. You can click on this, and when you see it turn blue, then you know that it's copied to the clipboard. So you can use this when you go over to the books. You can use this to copy in when you want to search for something. Now, some books search better than others, but this is a great quick way to do that. You can also click on these either at the top or at the bottom down here, and you'll see a similar blue color that'll come up. And so that's copied to the clipboard, and then you can run with it. And so all you have to do is do your Control V or Command V to paste that in for your books. Key mainline information here. This is pulled from a number of sources, so you may not see this at any individual book, but it's an amalgamation of lines that we get that kind of cut it to give you a base level view. I don't use this too much, but it's a nice reference to have. Now, if you click on any of these, or if you click on this over here, you can see it brings you up to the event details page for that game. So you can look at other plays, you can look at other markets, all of that stuff is available. This line here, what this is down here is an ability to see alternative lines. Now, in this case, we're looking at the main line that has 39 points of value, but on this side, like you can see, this one has just got 4, but if you wanted to click to it, this is, we're gonna look at it. Okay, nothing exciting going over here. And you can see on that 5%, there wasn't gonna be anything exciting. So let's go back to the main line here. I see this 2.83% edge at Bovada, and you can see a whole bunch of books. We're using the market view right now, which you can see up in the right-hand corner here. We're using at the market kind of core settings that we have at A Train Station. So we've got that. We are looking at this Bovada play. Now, what you're going to see at the top here are the two sides. Now, the key thing to note is that the sides are going to represent the odds. So on pitching over 3.5, that's going to be plus 135, and all of that's on the left, no matter what. On the right, it's going to be under 3.5, so the one further over here is right. Now, occasionally you'll see one-sided lines, so you got to be a little bit careful. One thing to also note is that when you see these percentages, so when we have EV, you're going to see the percentage, that's going to align to whatever's on that same side as the EV. So that EV percentage could be on either side, and you'll know that it's referencing the left or the right, but it's always going to be the same. So in this case, we're looking at plus 135 for the pitching over 3.5. Now let's go through, let's just scroll to the bottom of the page first, and then we'll come back to it. So you can see right here, either sides is the nature of the market. This is the edit button. So what this allows you to do is go in and change any of your book weightings. So you see all the books that have data for this market are available. You can change them however you want. You can also bring in different weightings that are available. Like you can go to the Sharp weightings, and that'll bring that in onto just this page to analyze it differently. And if you say, okay, well, I don't want to do any of that right now, we can just hit cancel. But just know you can change it. I mean, you could change this. I could do, I could add in Caesars for a 2 if I wanted to do that for some reason. Or if I wanted to go back to whatever I currently have, then I can just hit reset, and it'll just bring it back up into the page. But if you go back to the edit, change all this, edit, whatever, and you can cancel out. So it's just all that is local to this page, though. So you can change those, and we recommend that you do to get different perspectives. Like in this case, you might say, well, Pinnacle's kind of got a high hold here. What if I just looked at Circa? Is this still a play? You'd say, well, yeah, it's still a 2.9% play instead of 2.89, but it's still pretty good, right? So that's the kind of thing that you can do with this particular scenario. And see, like in this case, we just see there's arbitrage all over the place, but where is that arbitrage coming from? That arbitrage is actually coming from this one XBet, which is another massively positive EV play. We go down to the bottom here and look at the details. Here's where you get that list. Like a lot of odd screens only have the list. They don't have any of this graphical ability stuff up here. But you see this list down here, one XBet. This is what's creating that arbitrage in the market. This is very clearly a positive EV play if you can play at one XBet. But even Bovada on the other side is looking okay, right? It's looking like a very playable default line just on the analysis. Now, I probably would steer clear of the pitching over on the strikeouts at only 2.89%. I'm probably looking 3 to 4% on that typically, but that's a strategic play. And understanding what the data is telling you, this is looking like a positive EV play regardless. But this 1x bet to the under, whoo boy, yeah, definitely going to play that if you have that book. And that's where all these arbitrages and stuff are coming from. So let's go through and look at some of the individual aspects of this screen, because really this video is designed not to give you a ton of strategy, but to give you just the nuts and bolts of what's happening on the screen. So we covered the edit. This is the likelihood of winning based on our DVIG'd odds. So this is always going to add up to 100%. So we think that the strikeouts under, based on all the data in the market, is a 56.2% likelihood of winning, whereas the McCullough strikeouts over, 43.8% chance of winning. Now, when we compare those to this number, then we know that plus 135 is implying a greater likelihood of winning than 43.8. That's where these percentages come in. The DVIG, or worst case DVIGing range, is right here. What we have is we have the worst case DVIGing range. That's why you see two no VIG odds numbers. We have a high degree of confidence that based on all the calculations, the true no VIG odds fall somewhere between those. And we use the worst of them to calculate our EV. So our EV is going to be typically understated because these are not perfect calculations. They're just, they make different assumptions or whatever. Everything in sports betting is shades of gray. So you can see the different books here. And again, you can click on these books to get, if I just want to see Pinnacle, I can click just on Pinnacle and it runs it with that, right? And so you can see different perspectives on that and interact with it on the graph. You can also lock in these lines. You can click on it like I just did, and now that's going to lock in. So if for some reason you cared about season, you want to compare it that way, you can lock it in, and then you just click on it again, and that'll remove that lock. And then you can see the over on the right, we have the hold percentage. So those are going to be color coded. Just anything that goes above 6.5 is going to be full on red. Anything that goes below 5, I think, is going to be whole green. It's getting pretty green by the time you get down towards 5. Then if you prefer to have the price normalized as opposed to the percentage normalized for hold, this is the width called 45. And so that's where between 135 and minus 180, that's a width of 45. And that represents a price adjusted or price normalized amount of hold for the sports books in that particular market. And so that's how those can be useful. We generally kind of color code it. And again, strategy is not really the topic of this video, but it is something that I look at frequently. It's added context versus primary context, which are going to be the odds and the no VIG odds range. Those are going to be the key things that I'm looking at. Everything else is kind of surrounding it. It does so both visually and as far as how much it pops. Now, what you'll also see in this particular graph is we have a couple areas where we see very recent line movement. So the line movement, which you configure in your settings, in this case is set to 5 minutes and 20 minutes. The brightest white, which is actually a kind of greenish tinged white, that is going to be anything that's moved in the last 5 minutes. So we've been sitting on this page for a little bit, but it's 5 minutes here. You can see the middle area, it's tiny amounts, or this one down here has it too. That's kind of within that 5 to 20 minute range. And then anything that's in the kind of darker is just since it's open. Now you may see these little black indicators here. That is the opening line. So we try to make it so that you can see where the opening line was, but we try to make it so that it kind of fades into the background if you're not looking for that in particular, because it can get distracting. It's already quite a lot going on visually, but we try to bring it so that the things pop out at you. Now, the one thing that I would recommend for sure too is go through these toggle. So these toggle switches up here, these are going to be useful in a number of capacities. And you can see, like, I highly recommend you click on them because they're not going to break nothing. You click on them and see what it is. Oh, this is the no VIG odds, right? You can see those lines. All right, there we go. You see the dashes. The dashes simply mean the little indicators for the opening odds and the 100 marker. So we found that the 100 marker, it's nice to have just a visual reference of what that marker needs to be. You can see the hold percentage. So that is over here on the right. Like, again, you can turn these off if it's just too much visual overload, and sometimes it is. And you'll see that in a minute. But with, again, controlled separately, if you don't want to see it, you can turn it off just to keep your eyes clean. Because the fact is that when you are looking at the screen, it takes energy to interpret what's going on the screen. So you want to be as dialed in with your strategy. If it's irrelevant to your strategy, take it off so that it doesn't distract you and cause you mental energy, because that's, you only have so much money. You only have so much time and mental energy. You need to solve for optimizing them all. So we try to give you the ability to see what you want to see on these in the best way possible. In this case, we've got the EV bar. So that is, you can see it just behind that plus 135. It's right down here where you see me toggling it on and off. So there's not a ton of EV in this market anymore. So that is that. The ARB bar, you see a lot going on there because we had that crazy line over here from 1xBet. You also see that EV bar will be on that side, even though it's not a play that I can make because I don't have 1xBet in my list of playable books. That is one that you can do as well. EV percentage, simply that number there. And see, that's the thing, is that you look at this and you realize, like, the odds percentage, oh, that's the likelihood of winning, right? And so you can say, all right, well, if I don't want to have the range, I can turn that off. I can turn off the odds range. I can do, historical range. Look at how much cleaner the interface gets when you do that. And the header lock is simply this top part. If I turn it off, that goes away. If I leave it on, we still see the game details. So that's a matter of personal preference. Doesn't really impact your analysis, just how you're managing your screen real estate. But I want to just show you, if you look at this, we turn off all of these things, right? What happens now, if we turn them all off, we see just the odds, right? And that's like what most odds screens are. They're just, there's the odds. Maybe you get your your equivalent of a DVIG range, or you get our Novig line. Okay, so you got odds and Novig line. Fine. Maybe you get an EV percentage, but you compare that to what we offer and what we are able to display it to you all in one go. It really is a substantial amount of power. But I get that it can be a little bit overwhelming. But you say, okay, well, show me where the opening odds are and where the plus minus one. Okay, that's fine. All right, what's the hold percentage? Okay, I get that. Width, same deal. EV bar. All right, highlight where we have EV. Okay, that makes sense. ARB. Where do we have ARBs? Okay, let's look at that. When we have odds percentage, now we can say, okay, which side is winning, or what are the likelihood of winning on either side. The DVIG range kind of highlights where, and you see these little marks up here. These are the different calculation methods that are being used. So you can see on this one, this line is coming from the multiplicative, this one's coming from the logarithmic, and there's different patterns to why one would work better in one circumstance than another. You see the odds range. This is kind of giving us those average odds in the market from all the books that are available. You can see the historical range, which is all that line movement. It's all coming in, and obviously the header lock is something that you can turn on and off for whatever reason. And so it's really a massive amount of data. Now, let's get back into the details down here. And we can see there's a couple other pieces of information I just want to give you. You've got the EV percentage based on your weightings. Now, again, keep in mind, everything in A-Train Station is based on your weighting sets. So there's never any confusion as to what's causing the market view to give you these EV percentages. When you change the weightings for what you're using to evaluate the market, these EV percentages are going to change. And it's disingenuous that other tools out there don't tell you what those are, because you don't know then whether or not your EV is reliable or not, because it may be a good one to use, maybe a bad one to use, but either way, we think you should have control over that. So that's what we give it to you. These are your recommended bet sizes. This is the books, obviously, that you can play at. This is the odds that you're targeting at the book. This is the odds range that you've seen in that market, so you can actually see the numerics there. You can see these up or down arrows are in the last line movement. Has it gotten better or worse for you? In this case too, these are the minutes since the last known change. So this is since the last time this number has come in different than it is now. And so we're constantly updating these all on the back end, but this is the number of minutes, always the number of minutes since the last time this number changed at the book. So you can say, okay, at plus 112, it's been that way for over an hour and a half. And that's really important to know. These are all things that are able to be used right now with great effect and help drive your betting right at that moment that you need to make that decision as to whether or not you like this play, and then whether or not you're going to make the bet. And if you do, how are you going to bet it? How much are you going to bet it for? And what's your strategy going to be there? So this is really key to helping you analyze any of that. If you think about what we have on the just core play screen, it's a lot of useful information to help you decide whether or not you're going to come in and look at all of these. But in this case, what we have here are just so much key information about analyzing from a top-down perspective, especially right now, analyzing these markets top-down so that you can make a decision based on these bets. And we think we've engineered this in such a way that it will really help you drive optimal decision-making when you're making those plays with A-Train Station. And so with that, I think that covers all of the key things that we wanted to cover in this. Last thing at the bottom, just note that this is another copy of the wager information. So you'll see down here bets that you already have on this game. So let's actually go in here. We're just going to pull up an example where we can look and see something that we already have a bet on. So we have this bet, and this is a good example in a plays or in a bet detail screen where you can see this Declan Rice shots on target. We already have made this play. You can see this is the amount we made the play for. It's only $25. When you see it down here, and along with your closing line value on this. So this game hasn't happened yet. So this is in process closing line, but right now we're crushing it, right? We've gotten a much better price than what is currently either available or able to be played in the market. So that is something that we're pretty excited about in terms of how we're analyzing these plays. So that is a good example, and these will just show you what you have. You can also grade them from the screen. So if you're going through and looking at this play later, you can actually one click edit what your results are in that particular game. And with that is the key information on the bet detail screen. Hopefully you found this helpful. We'll continue to update these as we add more features and as we get different questions on things that might need to be addressed. So keep a lookout for updates. We'll certainly let you know when those come out. So you might have thought that the video was over, but it's not. We're actually going to show you now some new functionality that we've added since the original video was recorded that a lot of people have been asking about. And I wasn't going to do any video on this, and I'm not doing a standalone video, but I wanted to at least get this into the help video so that you could know what's going on with stats on our bet details screen, because we know that stats are really important. So I have a few examples. We're going to talk through what this stuff means. So let's go into this. And what we have here is this is a baseball play, and we brought stats in, and I just want you to understand what is going on with all the colors and the backgrounds and the highlights and all of that. So what we have is, in this case, we're looking at a baseball game. This is a player prop for Mickey Moniak, and what we see here is LAA, he's on the Angels, okay? On either side, you see a 30% and a 70%. Now, what you're going to see to the left of that, everything starts in the center and radiates out. All right, so the most recent game is this game that's not in gray. Grays are rest days. This is the last game that Moniak played, and it should be actually Moniak started, but that's not yet been implemented consistently yet. So that will get to that point, but it has not yet been implemented. What this says is in the last 10 games, he hit over a 0.5 home run. So he got a home run, one or more home runs in 30% of those games. Okay. That's what this says. 30% that. 70% of the time in the last 10 games, he got under a home run or under half a home run. Right. So you can see every time he hit a home run, or in this case, 2 home runs, he won the home runs over and he lost the home runs under. So this is all about the performance relative to the stat being measured. These numbers are how many home runs he hit. The gray are rest days. So one rest day, two days off. So that's how long it was in between games. Sometimes that's relevant, especially for pitchers, right? So you're going to see that. You'll see that in the games or whatever, but gray means days off. Okay, red means they lost. Green means they won. Okay? You see these crosshatches? It's hard when I put the hover over, but you see the crosshatch with the 0 and with the 1? That means it was an away game for LAA. So an away game has that kind of black stripy thing going on. Okay? The other thing, there's 2 other things to talk about. One are these arrows. What the arrows designate, and this is certainly not obvious, but very helpful once you understand it. What the arrows designate is this is about this person's performance, right? And so in this case, over or under home runs, it's very simple. We're going to show you an example that has 2 lines, and that's going to start to make more sense. But some stats, it's actually relevant, not just what that person did, but how many runs perhaps they gave up as a team. So that implicates the total on the other side. We'll show you an example of that in a moment. So that's what the arrows mean. So sometimes those arrows aren't there, and that means that it's not this person, it's the other person or the other team, the other side of its performance. Okay. The final thing which you don't see on this is some of them will have white highlights around the edges. What that means is that they're playing the same team tonight in their matchup, or today in this matchup that we are considering for this game, as they did in that other game. So a lot of times in baseball, you'll see this is the third of a 3-game series or something like that. You'll see 2 white highlighted boxes. That's why those are there, is because it helps you know, hey, this person's got this team's number. They played them twice in the last 10 days. This person's hit home runs both times. Maybe they'll be due again. Again, this is very basic statistics, but what it does is it gives you an order of magnitude. Now, the reason I chose this particular one is this is the kind of play that before we had stats, I wouldn't touch. I wouldn't touch it. And that means because you have a FanDuel one-sided over, everybody else in the market's pretty well consolidated, right? Everybody's doing their thing, and they're pretty similar, give or take a little bit. And then you got FanDuel going, meh, and they're way over here with a one-sided line. And you're like, I have no idea. I have no idea if I can play this or not, because FanDuel's broken everything. And I can't read it. Just who knows, right? But with stats now, at least with 10 games of recency, you get a little bit of a sanity check. And when you see FanDuel's offering this line, what you see here, this is the EV. We've long had that. But now you see this little arrow and it says 19%. Well, 19% is that's the break-even amount. I need this home run to happen more than 19% of the time. And if that does, this is going to be profitable. If it doesn't, this is not going to be profitable. Our no-vig odds aren't helping us. They say, well, you need it more than 19% of the time, right? The other side's going to win 77% of the time. We're like, well, that doesn't give us a whole lot to work with because you got some worst-case division going on in there. This by itself, hard to read. You don't know if that 4.3 is really reliable or not. But you look up here and you say, ooh, 30%. Well, he's done pretty well. You know, he's gotten 3 home runs in the last, or 3 games with home runs in the last 6 games. That's pretty good. In the last 6 games, he's at 50%. That might make you lean towards playing this home run over. And it may be a good idea. It's certainly some better context than what we had without stats. And that was the key to this. And there's some things that we're going to do soon to quantify it and add value to it, and a whole bunch more context coming. But in an initial sanity check type of form, because we know markets like this are not very efficient, we want to have some bottom-up influence just to check is this somehow reasonable? It's a reasonableness check. And so that's what we're doing with these. And I think it's really, really powerful. So let's look at a couple other examples. I want to show you something that's really important. This is on college football. And right now when we're recording this video, college football has mostly all games from last year, right? We don't actually have the latest game updated just yet in here. So in this one, everything was from last year. You can see this little thing that says last, right? So the key to this is that you're looking at Georgia Southern and you're looking at Nevada. Well, these are 2 separate teams, but this is a total for both of those teams. So what we're doing is we're looking at what have these teams done in terms of the points that they've had in the games that they've played, both for them and the other team, because it's all additive, right? So we want to look at that first half over 27. How often does that occur? In this case, they had a tie, so you see that blue. So that's exactly what the line is right here. So, but again, this is from last year. You shouldn't use this at all for college football right now, but it shows you at least a couple things that we didn't have on the other one. Let's go to this last one. All right, this last one is an example of when you see a couple of the arrows missing. So in this case, if you read up here, you see this is Central Michigan, and it's looking at whether or not they had the money line. This side for Florida International is really focusing on this side of which games they had the money line. You don't really have the opponent match up against Florida International every time. Like it's not something that you can reasonably do, right? So in on the money line, it's they either won or they lost. So this is the point differential that they had in that game. So it's offsetting because it's going to be the opposite. But in other scenarios, you're going to see where it wouldn't be just a mirror image of it. But this is what the opponent results were. So it's not the Florida International money line, it's the opponent to Florida International down here. Up here, Central Michigan, the opponent to Central Michigan down here. Now that's still being factored in because sometimes you win the money line and sometimes the opponent wins the money line and sometimes you manage to lose the money line. So we got to bring in how did their opponent do and use that as part of the basis for the stats. So the key thing here again is what the arrow saying. This is Central Michigan's performance, their money line. This is what their opponent did. Now, if I had a better line than this like money line, you would be able to see the numbers change and different things. But the important part of this is those arrows tell you that this was the key to that team's performance. So that is really the key to stats right now. Again, this is a beta feature. This is not completely done by any stretch, but I at least wanted to take a little bit of time in a place that you can get it so that you can walk through what the stats are all about and at least use what we have there today as best you can. Again, I would use it mostly for baseball right now because the football stuff is mostly all for last year. Until we get a few weeks into NFL and into college, it's really not going to be worth spending any real time with it because the stats just don't matter that much after 1 week or after 2 weeks. I think you really need a few weeks before they even matter at all. So again, it's useful. It's nice to have, but be cautious about it. Don't start betting bottom up just because we have a couple stats information. This is nothing in the grand scheme of things stats wise. But on stuff like this baseball one for the home runs, I find it pretty darn useful as a sanity check, as something to look at. Again, this will continue to grow in many, many ways, and the capabilities here are going to be just unbelievably powerful. So stick with us, keep growing, keep building up your strategies. We're going to keep reinforcing this with more and more information, and I will keep creating the help videos to help you understand it. They may not be short, but they may be long. Hopefully they're helpful. So with that, until the next one, thank you for joining me. We will see you next time, and good luck on the betting, on the stats, and on the live betting. If you haven't checked out the live betting video, there's also a video over there. So with that, thank you all for joining me. We will see you on the next one.